There is something important about identity that most people do not fully understand. What feels like personality is often the result of repetition. We tend to think of identity as something fixed, something we discovered, something that simply is. But if you look carefully at how your days unfold, you will begin to see that much of who you believe yourself to be has been shaped through patterns that have been practiced over and over again. Your nervous system learns from frequency. It learns from what happens often. It learns from what is repeated in similar environments at similar times of day and in similar emotional contexts. So think about how your mornings unfold. There's a sequence. You open your eyes, you register the room, you move your body in a particular way, you reach for your phone, or maybe you don't. You check your messages or you avoid them. You get up at a certain speed, you shower in the same order, you think similar thoughts about the day ahead. You get the kids ready, you get your morning coffee. So if most mornings begin with a subtle sense of urgency, that urgency becomes associated with the act of waking up. Your body begins to prepare for it, even before you're fully conscious. And after enough repetition, the nervous system doesn't wait for evidence. It just anticipates it and repeats it. The same thing happens when you leave the house. Perhaps there is a particular stretch of road where you always feel slightly tense because you expect traffic. Or perhaps there's a particular station platform where you always feel rushed because it's crowded. Or perhaps there's a certain hallway at work where your body tightens slightly because difficult conversations have happened there before. And over time, these places become linked to states. The body remembers that exact pattern. And when a pattern repeats often enough, the state begins to feel like part of you. You might say, I'm someone who's always stressed in the evenings. But if you look closely, what may have happened is that for years your evenings have involved coming home tired, replaying the day, anticipating the next one, anticipating stress at home, and telling yourself internally that you cannot keep up. So that sequence becomes rehearsed. The body learns it, the brain wires it. And eventually, 6 o'clock in the evening carries a certain internal tone automatically. Even on weekends, even on holidays, even when nothing objectively stressful is happening. This is how rehearsal shapes identity. It also happens in conversations. Imagine that every time someone raises their voices slightly, you immediately link, this is my fault. And that thought might have been learned years ago. It might have made sense in a particular context at one point, but if it continues to appear automatically and you agree with it repeatedly, it strengthens. After enough repetition, you no longer experience it as a thought, you experience it as reality. You say, I always trigger conflict, but what may actually be happening is that you have rehearsed an interpretation often enough that it now feels factual. It feels true to you. So repetition makes things feel true. The brain doesn't measure truth by accuracy, it measures familiarity. The more often a thought appears, the easier it becomes to access. The easier it becomes to access, the more convincing it feels. In this way, certain self-concepts feel so very solid. If you have spent years rehearsing the idea that you're behind in life, you will find evidence for it everywhere. If you have rehearsed the idea that you are not chosen, you will interpret neutral behavior as confirmation for that. Repetition builds expectation. Expectation shapes perception. Perception shapes behavior. And behavior reinforces identity. It's not very mystical, it's just a feedback loop. Now, this is where responsibility becomes very important, crucial, and it needs to be understood carefully. Responsibility here does not mean that you created every pattern consciously, and it doesn't mean you are to blame for it. It doesn't mean you chose every belief, and it doesn't mean you are at fault for early conditioning from society, from your surroundings. Responsibility means you're participating in what continues. Each time a familiar thought appears and you agree with it, without examining it, you reinforce it. Each time you choose to stay with a particular interpretation, rather than questioning it, you strengthen its pathway in your nervous system. This participation is very subtle, but it happens in the most ordinary moments. When you're standing in the kitchen, washing dishes, you're rehearsing something. Perhaps you're replaying a conversation and strengthening resentment. Perhaps you're thinking about the future and strengthening worry. Perhaps you're judging yourself for something very, very small. When you're driving home from work, you're rehearsing something. Maybe you're anticipating exhaustion. Or maybe you're reinforcing the idea that you cannot handle more than you can right now. Or maybe you're telling yourself that tomorrow will be the same. When you lie in bed before sleep, your final thoughts of the day are powerful rehearsals. The state you fall asleep in conditions the baseline you wake up into. Hear this again. The state you fall asleep in conditions the baseline you wake up into. If every night you fall asleep thinking about what is missing, what went wrong, or what you fear might happen, your nervous system adapts to that exact frequency. And after months or years, that frequency feels like your personality, your identity. But personality, in many ways, is practiced state. Now, let's talk about change. When you decide to shift a pattern, the first experience is often discomfort. If you have rehearsed irritation every day in traffic for 10 years, choosing calm on day one will feel very unnatural. Your body will probably resist it because it expects the old state. If you have rehearsed insecurity in moments of silence for years, choosing neutrality instead may feel forced at first. That doesn't mean the new pattern is false. It means that the old one has more repetitions behind it. In the end, it's just a matter of repetition. Neural pathways strengthen through use. They weaken through disuse. If you consciously practice a new internal agreement repeatedly, you're literally building a new pathway in your nervous system, in your neural pathways. 10 days of repetition can begin to create subtle change, 30 days deepen it, 90 days stabilize it further. This is not about pretending something is true when it's not. It's about choosing which interpretation you will strengthen. If you repeatedly think, I can handle this, even when your body feels uncertain, you begin to build evidence for that identity. Your posture adjusts, your tone adjusts, and you take slightly different actions. Those actions produce different outcomes, and different outcomes reinforce the new identity. This is how identity upgrades. It's very gradual, and it's built through ordinary moments, and it doesn't require dramatic intensity. The key is awareness. You begin by noticing when and where certain states appear automatically. You notice that every Sunday evening a certain heaviness maybe sets in you. And you notice that every Monday morning you feel pressure before the day has begun. You notice that every time someone looks at you a certain way, your body reacts. Instead of accepting that as personality, you begin to see it as a rehearsal. And once you see it as rehearsal, you realize it can be adjusted. You don't need to fight your patterns. You just need to out-practice them. If for years you have rehearsed exhaustion at 6 in the evening, begin by practicing steadiness for 5 minutes at that hour. If you've rehearsed self-criticism before sleep, begin by rehearsing one stabilizing thought consistently instead. The nervous system adapts to what it experiences most often. Identity is not something you discover once and for all. It is something you reinforce daily. And once you understand that you are reinforcing something constantly, responsibility feels very different. It no longer feels like blame, it feels like participation. You are participating in who you are becoming. In every commute, in every conversation, every bedtime reflection, and every repeated interpretation. What you rehearse becomes familiar. What becomes familiar feels like you. And once it feels like you, the world reflects it back in subtle ways. That is the deeper layer of identity work. It's steady, it's grounded, and it's built through repetition. The fun fact is you are already doing it. The only question is whether you're doing it consciously.